tentative program for next month is on there, placeholder. It's sort of the one right before the holidays, right after Thanksgiving, so do less than normal, so we'll do sort of fellowship, hands-on labs, workshop type of things. We'll do better than that. So, but bring a laptop, and if you're there, you can probably just go on and work with the laptop. That's actually you can use it. At least ID. And I think that's it there. And so I don't have anything planned for January for next year. So suggestions, bring them in. Might find out what you can get out. After that, I'm just going to turn it over to Steve and Matt here for RTI.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is it's a lot of fun. Thanks for inviting me to do this. We're going to talk about JON and RTI. I'm going to do a basic, this is what JON looks like. So if we have any JBoss users, I think JON is probably an underutilized tool for JBoss users. It's a decent management tool that comes in, manages the entire portfolio, and it's functionality that a lot of users have and they have available access to, but they don't know how to use it. So we're going to show you the basics here. I do have a birthday this almost a week. I will be turning 42. After the recent conversation here, I hope to reach 43. So. Little depressing start to the show. So I only have a few slides. I'm trying not to do any more PowerPoint, and I think 4 slides is enough. We have an entire middleware portfolio right at a lot of tools in the automation space, the integration space, data integration space. All of these tools have a single development environment, let's say it's IE. And we all use the same management tool, the JBoss Operations Network, to some degree or another, depending on the product. But each one of them does have a plugin for JON. So the basic idea is that you want to be able to deploy, manage, and monitor. Steve is going to show you some extended monitoring and capability with the RTI plugin after I show you the basics here. This slide's a little bit old. There's not a database repository per se anymore. We use some standard key in there.
That is fun, but
yeah,
it
changes categories. Yeah, so you can leverage. It's a little bit different for scaling now. The idea is that you have a JBoss Operations agent that runs on your virtual machine and has your JBoss software running on it. And then you have a centralized server that basically pulls from information from those agents. Okay, and that actually is it for my slides. So let's get on to the actual demonstration. I just installed this, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to log in. The first thing that you'll see on the login is the dashboard. This gives you kind of a view of the things that you want to see right away. For instance, alerts or unavailable resources. As an admin, when you first log in, you might want to see those. You can also configure this to customize it to see the things that I want to see. We had this concept of a discovery queue that I just installed here, or just added as a portlet. And the discovery queue is all of the resources that you can inventory that you haven't pulled into your inventory yet. And I currently have a couple of instances of JBoss running inside here that I could add to my inventory. And feel free, if anybody has any questions, just stop me and ask me.
So there's agents already on this machine?
Yeah, actually, this is all on my laptop. So I've got JBoss, the JON server, the JON, and all of it's running right here. Okay.
Running programs or
Yeah, I have a Postgres database, and this is using Postgres for its central information. So let's go over to the inventory tab. The inventory tab, I can see the different things in my inventory. You can look at things, for instance, basic platforms So I have a resource page for my Linux platform that I'm running on here. If I had other agents out there on different machines, I would have a whole list. There are a lot of things on the platform that I can see, so I'm just going to give you kind of a summary of the inventory here. I can see the CPUs, the file systems. I can monitor memory usage, CPU utilization. If I go back to the inventory tab, I can see the various servers that are out there available. So I can see my Cassandra JVM and my Red Hat storage node. We also have the concept of groups that I'm going to show you here in a minute. Let's go back to our discovery view. I have two standalone DC JBoss instances here. And I'm going to pull those both into my inventory. And I think because of the display, you're not seeing my scroll bar here. So let me get this to work here. There we go. I'm going to have to do something in order to get this to. Okay, so I've got those in there. And let me
refresh it.
Yeah.
Reload.
I'm going to have to reload this because it's not pulling the.
To add, you should start with
What's that?
to ask for.
Huh?
To add, start with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just take a local hook, grab it on.
Yeah. And for some reason on this display, I'm not getting the rest of it out here.
Well, that's odd.
Yeah.
Can you click control minus and scale this display?
Let's see if I can.
Is it cutting off what you're seeing on the screen?
Yeah.
Should be an add button on the bottom. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. For some reason, it's
It's not detecting the sides.
I had an adjustment screen resolution, that's not that.
Yeah. Let me pull. Let me see if I can get it to mirror. I've got this display mirrored. Sorry about the technical difficulties here. Let's see if we can. Yeah, this whole thing is out of control. Well, I think that should work. All right, let's pull this. Yeah, this is my favorite part of life down here. Let's go to the inventory tab again and see if we can't.
There you go.
There we go.
Just hit that local host. Import the whole.
Yep. Well, I just want to pull just a couple of standalone servers here that I'm going to pull in. Let's go with. I'm having trouble seeing it, so.
Yeah, switch key.
Yeah.
It's not getting them together.
So this is
The first two. Over.
there we go. There we go. All right, so let's pull in two EAP instances. And now if I go into, actually I can see better up here.
You can set it as best file, and just close it out, just add more in the middle. So if you go down and click there and drag it all the way to the.
Yeah, there we go. That probably will help. Thanks. Okay, so let's now if I go into the servers, I'll see my two EAP instances. You see the question mark beside there. I haven't actually authenticated into that. I need to be able to administer these two particular servers. And John's not going to let me bypass that, so I'm going to have to add in a valid user ID password in there. But
Is there a way to script that? For example, let's say I figured out how to use the REST API to go ahead and know everything that I'm going to discover. But I haven't figured out a way to tell it to go ahead and say, here's the password. You know, so we can discover them automatically using the REST API script.
yeah,
But I haven't done what you're about to do, I think. Figured out how to do that.
yeah, yep.
Is it the REST API?
Yeah, and one of the options, hopefully we'll cover it. There's iron network, this is not and you want command line, and that command line gets the whole back to the repository. You can script anything you want to do, to change anything you want, including passwords and all that stuff.
Yeah, and we're not going to go over the command line. We're just going to.
No, it's server side. But with respect to the law, it's all there. We create them all.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. So we have this concept of groups in here, and what we're going to do is we're just going to manage all the servers as groups, so I don't have to do these configuration changes one at a time.
You set password once for all.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So it's everybody's in the same group. I'll show you that. But you can also script it too when you really import them. So the concept of groups, I can have a dynamic group like unavailable servers, so these guys will show up since they can't communicate. You know, I can't go in and check how those resources are. I can't pull those resources and metrics. Problem groups, another example, a dynamic group. Then there's a compatible and mixed group. Compatible would be 2 EAP instances. A mixed group might be for a test team that's got or an Apache web server and a database and a couple of EAP instances. So I'm just going to go in here and create a new group. We'll call this test EAP. I'm going to make it recursive so all the child resources are available. And next here. And then if you have a huge inventory, I can just keep narrowing it down until I only get the resources that I want to see. So in my case, I don't have a lot of things in my inventory that's not needed. But for other people with a massive inventory, this becomes pretty helpful. So I'm going to pull those in, and I've got my test EAP group. Let's bring this over a little bit more. Probably don't need to see so much in the way of sending it to children, but I'd love to see a little bit more about the type. Okay, so if I go over to the inventory tab.
Just to control requirements and make it smaller.
Yeah, you think I need to? Okay, so here are the connection settings. I'm still on the group test EAP that you can see over here. And I can just go in and enter my password and save that. I'm going to go ahead and run the avail-app here on agent. Usually it's pulling everything out at the pulling interval, so I can force it to recognize discovery and availability with couple commands: discovery cache, discovery cache, and avail. And it's going to lazy load this stuff. So let me go back to all groups and go back to my test EAP. And now I have inventory showing me data sources, and if I go into a particular item here, I can look at the resource page for just individual instances as well. And then as I expand it out, it shows me the availability of each one. So let's go back to groups and just see what we can see from group level. I can take a look at the data sources. It comes configured with the example DB, so I can mess around with the configuration for both data sources at once. For monitoring, I can take a look at all sorts of things such as the availability count. So, for instance, the backend database and your connectivity to it. So often what breaks you down in a production environment. So maybe I want to have an alert flag if I start getting a low available count. I probably would want to do the collection interval frequently in 40 minutes here in that case. That was critical to me. And so this is where you would change that. Other things, if I go over to the platform envy, this is all.
First collection interval, is that collection interval just from the server perspective or from the agent perspective? And is the agent collecting more frequently than 40 minutes and then just reporting every 40 minutes? Or?
It is.
Yeah.
The agent will, on its own time, yes, it's single thread, then it only is responsible for calling out the box with information. But this is the only different calls that not loaded express.
But remember, the agent reports not just the contact number, but the average, max, minimum. It does that in that period that you've asked to monitor.
Yeah.
So it will look constantly to see the variations and so on as much as it can.
And more granular.
And monitor graphically, and it sends those three values back to the server.
And you have to watch out. If you go in and you start configuring all your collection intervals, if you have a lot of them, then you can bog down the system.
If you can go back to your dashboard, it'll show how much it's monitoring.
So if we go to some other things that you can take a look at, you can see the garbage collection information, you can see the thread. So if I want to take a look at the heat resources, I want to take a look at, for instance, the committed heat, initial heat usage, maximum heat usage. Sure.
Is anybody's mic on, by the way? Because somebody's just saying we're getting high echo and reverb.
Is anyone on the phone? Plus?
I had this problem before, it's because of the mic.
Does it make it any difference?
I can't, unfortunately, I can't. Go on, then I will.
Yeah, I think my mic is disabled, but is there a way to disable it in the Google Hangout?
Yeah, in the hangout top,
Yep.
there's a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to do it on the hardware, but maybe that'll help. Ask people on the in the Hangout if that makes a difference.
Okay, yeah, keep on going though.
Sure. Okay, so I've looked at my data source settings. I can look at my Java and garbage collection settings, thread usage, all sorts of things, metrics that I can collect on the system, and we'll show some other things. I'm looking at this from a group level too, so I'm monitoring across all of my JBoss instances in this group. The other thing that it's doing is it hasn't done it so far, but it's collecting a baseline over time of what it thinks is a valid are valid thresholds. You know, what is it running in between? And then after a week or 2 weeks, then I will start to get after a couple of weeks, I'll start to get a really good baseline of what's a healthy system. And one of the reports it will show are any metrics that are out of bounds for healthy. You know, what's out of the norm, so that I come in and I recognize that my heat's been higher than normal. As an admin, I can come in and see that the system has a higher heat utilization.
By the way, Charles mentioned somebody asking a question about integration with Nagios. So can you have Nagios collect from?
You can. There's I can communicate via SNMP traps. So there is a way to integrate. Yep. As a matter of fact, I can communicate and send alerts via SNMP. We'll show that. We'll show that as a potential way of notifying another system.
Question: how is this? Can you protect this from a buffer overflow, memories and stuff, or that? I don't know.
What do you mean protect buffer?
Well, essentially, you're talking about memory pretty much, and heat pretty much. Buffer overflow. Can you? I'm a security person, so I kind of was interested in hacking into memory pretty much, but. Can you protect that pretty much?
Wait till we get RTI in. We can absolutely give you information about the JVMs and the heat information. These guys blow that out into additional information that is very granular.
Okay.
So whatever your hot contempt is, you can most likely go in and make up rules and say, when I get to this level, I want to do something.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So what we would do from the perspective of JON or RTI is recognize where the heap is, and once you get above a certain threshold or you get into a certain area, then provide an alert or notification or do some resource operation like, okay, this is way too high, let's restart this so we don't go beyond this threshold.
Sure, sure. And you also define the startup parameters in JON. So you can go in and say, okay, this server is not even utilizing the memory, it's reduced the memory consumption, or vice versa. You might realize it, change your heat point. You can do all of that from this control configuration settings.
It sets alerts then?
those are not only alerts, but configurations of that server. So if you want to change something about the dimensions or how you want to set up the KVM when it runs, with what parameters, all that is changeable.
Right. And we'll do an example
Yeah.
for so that you'll be able to see that.
That's my follow-up question.
No, that's a good question. So right now, I told you, so there's a reports tab at the very top. I told you it would take a baseline. I don't have any data because this is a brand new installation. But over time, there's a report that'll show you by default where if there are suspect metrics, you can see them. Also, if you're trying to go back and audit what people have done, maybe something happened, I can go and I'm kind of blocked by this, but there's a button down here where I can export. So I can take all of these configuration changes that have occurred, and I can export and I can go back and start auditing. So if something broke in production or something broke in test, now I can see what configuration changes have occurred. I can also see recent operations. So if somebody restarted the server or somebody stopped the server, I'll be able to see that through JON. Also, we'll talk about drift. So let's go back and let's take a look at a server here. Let's take a look at this guy. Let's see if I can get over here to the, there we go. There's this drift tab. So one of the things that, boy, this is really going to bother me.
Can you hide it?
I can't hide it. There we go. You can see the obvious hide button sitting right in front of me.
Hide button is hidden.
It was who hides the hide button? So I'm going to create a new drift definition. So we want to see the configuration of the bin directory in my EAP or config directory. I want to know if somebody manually goes in and changes one of those configuration files. I've provided my teams with a mechanism for doing it here in JON, but there's always that one person who goes in, logs into the machine, and starts mucking with your configuration files. So now I want to create a drift of that. So, and we're going to pin a particular configuration. So we're going to call this EAP config, and let's go down here. We're going to set the interval to 30 seconds, close to 1800, and we go to home dir, and here what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look at anything in the bin directory for this for right now, and I'm going to hit OK. And so now I've created basically a drift definition for the bin directory and any of the files that exist in there. I can add and exclude as many directories as I want. I can include all of the directories should I want to do that. And the first thing that I'm going to do here, it should be pinned. I'm going to go ahead and select it, and I'm going to do a detect. And what that should do is it should go ahead and create a snapshot here. Yeah, so I might have to do a.
So the agent's going to go and look at everything. It actually calculates a hash for these files.
And what will happen is that once it has do a discovery.
You configure with email alert.
Yeah.
Can you configure drift monitoring with email alert?
Yeah. So if I can do drift detection, and if I can set up an alert for any drift, and then one of my notifications can be an email, so that you as an admin gets an email anytime the drift detection occurs.
You go one step further. Tell it if it's managed or detected, roll back automatically.
Oh. Okay, so now I've got my snapshot. It's pinned this configuration, and let's just go in and let's do something that we're not supposed to do. Let's just go and edit the run.sh. And let's go up here and just, we'll just added a comment. Okay, so we just added a comment to the run.sh, and then we'll go ahead and see if it'll detect it. It might take it just a minute to go through there. And what we'll do is eventually this will probably sometime within the 30 seconds. We'll take another snapshot and we'll see that it's not the same. And let's see if it'll do it here. Yeah, there. Oh. Okay, so it says in compliance. Did I not change something here? Let's do the detect. Ah, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot to pin it. So it showed me that there was a change, but I didn't pin it. And so we'll go back and make another change here. And now that it's pinned, and we'll delete that change.
There's a difference between drift and compliance. So drift is just something has changed. Compliance means something has changed against some standard.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you're going to do something change, then something change, based on something.
Well, it'll just say something's different from last time. That's all drift.
Yeah.
So
Something's
you have a
different.
standard, so you have a baseline file, then
So you can set a template image as your standard, or you can just pin it to the existing snapshot that it has and say that.
Yeah, so what we've done is we've taken just everything that's in that particular directory. We could have added other directories and said, this is the baseline, pin this configuration. If anything changes, it's now out of compliance. So,
Or you can make a generic template and I'll apply that to many, many systems. So they don't have to be the same.
one question I have is, can you use like a DevOps type environment where we have development, testing, and operations, and keep track of each one of the operations? So also as part of that testing, you see what has changed, and as you move towards operations, you provide more resources to it.
It will record the changes. We have a better way of dealing with those changes called bundles. I don't know if we're going to cover that.
yeah, we are going to.
But I have absolute ways of handling changes of deployed artifacts and servers.
Well, okay, so I'm going to get this to detect here. It should be pinned now. And it should come back and show that. So while we're doing that, let's go and take a look at some bundles. So we have something called RHQ Ant, which is basically an Ant-based binary that, so if you use the scripting Ant, that allows us to go and do bundle deployment. So you can have an application as a bundle deployment. This entire lab was installed via Ant, via RHQ Ant. So it's a bundle itself. Let's go ahead and create a new one. I want to show you one more thing in here before we do that. I want to show the administration, the users, and the roles. So I can basically define what permissions people have at a pretty fine-grained level. So I can hook into existing LDAP, for instance. So if I have a let's go to LDAP. I can hook into that LDAP system so that people, I can use my existing roles, or I can define them here, so I can add new roles. I have high-level permissions, such as managing security and settings and repository and bundles, or bundle groups. A bundle group is just maybe I have several application bundles that are related, so I'll have a bundle group. And I can apply permissions based on those groups. Inventory management, configuration control, and then I can have a specific, so all of these things can have specific read-write. You know, I can choose whether the users can view them. For instance, my development team can probably come in here and view a lot of these things, but I don't want them making changes to the test or production environment. So this enables them to take in on a DevOps style, you know, take a look and communicate, see the same things everybody else sees, but I still don't want them to change my configuration. I can provide permissions for different resource groups. So for instance, we created that test EAP group. I can give my test team permissions specific to this group so that they can come in and they can make the configuration changes.
I suggest one configuration that's worthwhile considering, and that is to in the development environment, have the individual developers also have agents and be comparing configurations of individual developer environments to baseline environment, production environment. Because it's not unusual for a developer to make changes, adding queues, etc., in standalone or some other configuration file, push the code on to QA, and QA goes installs and says, hey, I haven't got that queue, or something's wrong, what is it, etc. So you might be able to add that as part of the lifecycle process as to before a developer can push something in. It's a good idea to have somebody compare the environment to see if he's got something different that isn't the global or standardized.
Absolutely. Or even maybe package their entire environment as a bundle.
The other thing that
You know, like a
the other thing that I found particularly valuable is to have developers participate in the monitoring. The reason for that is they begin to learn what does somebody else need to monitor my stuff.
Yeah,
And that's a particularly valuable thing. It shouldn't be up to operations to figure out what needs to be monitored.
Yeah.
A developer should be able to say, here are the critical resources or components that should be checked in. Here's a template of my doing that right now. Just
After they're part of that. Need to start from that, but I'm making components.
Yeah. And one thing that you'll see is some of the stuff that Steve's going to do, which really gets into how that DevOps process can really work with some of the tools that will enable that, anyways, or help to enable it. So we can give a lot of different permissions here. We can add users from LDAP. We can create our own users. So this gives you the ability to restrict or enable people to see certain resources. Let's go over to bundles. So let's go and install a new bundle. So basically, your developers can pass anything from an entire JBoss infrastructure to an actual application as a bundle. And we've got a silly guess application here that we're going to pull in. It's this recipe. You'll look at it and you'll recognize it as an AMP script. So just a deploy.xml here. Upload it in here. I've actually done some changing. It's not EAP 5.1, we're at 6.2, but I'll change that later. I have some different values in here. You can see that in this particular model, I have things like archive name, where the archive name tells me, what resource is going to have to go along with this in order for it to deploy as an application. In this case, it's the guest v1 zip file. Okay, so I'm not going to assign a bundle group here because I only have one application. But if I had multiple applications that were that I wanted the team to deploy, I would create a bundle group. And let's go ahead and pull up the zip file. Upload it there. It's selected and uploaded, and now I have a bundle that I can go ahead and deploy here. So so I have this idea of versions. Right now I have version 1.0. I could have multiple versions here, and destinations. So I have no destinations currently, so let's find one for it. Let's go ahead and deploy it. I'm going to call this EAP test destination. I'm going to assign a resource group, so I'm going to deploy it to my test EAP instances. Go to base deploy directory for those standalone servers. And we only have one version, so that's what we're going to install. And here I'm going to change that. This is 6.2. Clean deployment, this might be more useful in test. What this is going to do is wipe out anything that's already deployed there. So obviously production, that might be if you have multiple applications, you don't want to do that. But in this case, I really don't care. I'm just going to go ahead and use that. And now this should be deployed, and there it goes. It's cranking out that guest application. And let's,
so is this deploying to the deploy directory with the scripting?
Yep.
So it's not connected to the management console?
No, it actually has this bundle has a do deploy script that it puts out there, and it's putting it there in that the way I've done it is putting out there in the deploy, and so it sees that do deploy, and then the EAP is deploying it in. Let's see what I've got here. Let's make sure this is up and running, and it is. and my second one is up and running as well. So it went and deployed both applications, and they're now both running here. And I can take a look at the destination. I have my live EAP test deployment in here, and there are a lot of things I can do. I can sit here and I can revert back. So we just deployed 1.1. The unit testing all worked, but now my QA team has come to a full stop. There's something it didn't catch. I don't want to stop them. I want them to keep going, so I'm going to revert back to something that was actually working. Okay, so let's go back to finish this part of the demo up. Taking way too long here, Steve. So I have this this test EAP group, and let's go to the alerts tab here. What we're going to do is we're going to create an alert. We have this interesting problem that's happening. I worked at GSS and actually saw this problem live at some railroad in another country where the servers kept going down. They mysteriously going down, and it was hard for us to find out what the problem. The problem was that some evil person was doing a kill 9 on the Java process. It's like, oh, this is an extra Java process taking a bunch of resources and doing a kill 9 on it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do an evil kill 9 on it. And, so finally, what they did is they used JON to restart it automatically whenever the evil person came in and did that. So let's go ahead and create a definition here. And we're going to call this EAP not up. And this will be a high priority for us. So I've got these conditions. I can choose a couple of different ways. I can have multiple conditions in here and say, hey, you know, any one of these conditions occurs, let's go ahead and fire this alert. Or it can be a more complicated scenario where all of the conditions have to be met. In this case, we're just going to add one that says availability change, server goes not up, anything other than up. And we're going to go to the notification. So this notification, I can add multiple notifications. I can shoot out an SNMP trap. We talked about that. I can shoot out a direct email. I can notify one of the system users on the on this admin console. I can even do a resource operation, which is what I'm going to do now. We're going to start this particular resource should it be stopped for any reason. And now I'm running into the problem where I don't have, let's...
Is this pretty much the only way to restart a dead JBoss process? Because I guess this would, I mean, once a JBoss process is dead, there's no way to threads or processes. This is pretty much it. I had someone ask me, because they were using a different tool, like WebSphere, it had an auto restart feature. And I was able to sufficiently answer the question. It's like this is the only way pretty much to do it.
I was going to say, I think they might actually run more like the main mode, where they have two different, they have, you know, like the main mode, you have the controller processes in one div, and then something.
So they didn't
manage server, so
process.
I mean, the server goes down if you have something.
Yeah.
So if we were running JBoss in the main mode, that'd be another alternative. Than,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, it could really complicate it, because you'd really be more concerned with the server rather than either the host or the.
Yeah. So what I'm doing here is I'm running an HA profile, but these are all standalone instances. So I don't have a domain console, right? And I don't have those controllers.
You basically JON, primarily use JON. Recommended.
No. Yeah, I found a lot of, it depends on what you're trying to do, but there are some advantages to each, to running in domain mode or a standalone HA mode, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I think bundles is one advantage of running a standalone HA with JON.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. When people talk to me about main mode, they from what I can tell, is because they want to maintain a consistent configuration across a group of servers. It seems like you can do the same here with JON.
Another advantage of JON is that I can do this across multiple versions. So where the domain console is specific to a specific version of EAP, JON is not specific. So I can monitor and manage multiple versions of JBoss here. So it depends. It depends on your environment and what you're doing. There's valid reasons to use both. A couple other things. I can have a recovery alert fire. So that, hey, it's recovered. Send an email out. Let everybody know we're good. And I can also dampen so that if I'm looking for some condition that occurs very frequently, like a log message or something like that, I don't want to send. I don't want to fire alert every time that happens. So otherwise, I get swamped very quickly. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I have this definition here. We're supposed to do a start on that resource. And so now the evil SA comes in. And it's like, okay, what is taking all my resources on this machine? Aha, it's this JBoss 1 instance here, so let's just do a kill-9 on 6363, and I fixed the problem, and I'm going home. Isn't that what happens? They fix the problem, going home, and all of a sudden the user comes in and says, uh-oh, and starts calling in, hey, I can't get in. What this thing is, let's do a quick availability. Actually, usually I don't have to even do this. Usually this happens quickly enough that, let's see, it's yeah. Sometimes Firefox caches it, which is a pain. So, yeah, there it's back up. So now this is back up. Let's go back to our. So I wonder if it'll show it now. Yeah, it shows it now. So JBoss has restarted it. If I go in and we started at the dashboard, if I go back to the dashboard, one of the things that we showed was recent alerts. So I log in, I can see, hey, for some reason JBoss was the JBoss not up alert fired 4 times last night. What's going on? Fortunately, it's up. My users aren't complaining and keeping this up all night. But I know that there's a problem. I need to be able to do something. And this is where Steve will come in and show how to really take some of the debugging tools and the collaboration tools here and just go a lot deeper.
All right, thanks, Matt. Let me switch modes for the local audience. I think I got that one right.
Or EBJ or HDMI?
I think it's just starting here. Just wirelessly connected.
Oh, try AirPlay.
Yeah, there we go.
That will come and go.
Oh, will it? Well, we'll deal with it. Okay, so here we go. So I'm Steve North, RTI product manager. The name of the product is RTI. It's for root cause transaction instrumentation. It's basically for tracing transactions as they move through your system. And what we're going to show you today is, in conjunction with Matt, is how RTI can work as a plug-in in the JON system to extend the monitoring capabilities. I'm going to follow Matt's lead here, and I just have a couple of slides to set the stage. I've already done that one. Here, basically, you can install RTI in the hosts where you need to collect the information, and as the transaction moves back and forth across your system, RTI collects information, and then basically you'll use the RTI console here to bring all that information together, correlate it, and do your analysis.
You use some kind of transaction ID?
We use a tag and follow methodology, yeah. Yeah, that's how we're actually doing it under the covers. All right, so RTI, you can, it integrates with JBoss Operations Network, what we're going to show you here. It also can run directly connected to JBoss. For example, developers can do that in their own sandbox, JBoss. We also have an OpenShift cartridge. You can try it out on OpenShift, and you can just install it in the cloud if you need to. When you install RTI, the first thing we do is what we call business transaction discovery. That's just discovering what requests are entering your system. As soon as we discover the requests, we begin what we call transaction monitoring. We're producing rate and response time metrics. In the JON environment, we take those rate and response time metrics and pump them out to the JON server, so they'll be available in the JON console, and also to do alerting, which we'll show you later. Our next level of data is what we call our lightweight transaction profiling. From those discovered resources, we're measuring the times of all of them and the average times, and we produce an aggregate report of those. The profiling is always on. It's designed for low overhead, 24/7 production use.
When you do profiling, can you go down to the method level? Like, are you inserting bytecode?
Yeah, we do all our work through bytecode insertion. You'll see what it is. Basically, the way RTI comes configured is out of the box. We instrument all of the EE frameworks and common libraries and things, but you can extend it if you have custom code in your application or use a third-party library that isn't out of the box. You can extend it to cover those things as well. All right, the next level of information. So the profiling is really sort of method entry and exit times, just kind of gives you a lightweight look at it. The next level is our deep dive transaction tracing. This can actually trace the transactions across JVMs here to give you the view. We'll show you some of that here shortly. And it produces method level diagnostics, and we're essentially capturing method parameters and things, and we'll show you the detail that you can get from that. While we're doing the tracing, we're also collecting resource metrics so that you'll have that along with the same set of trace data that you're working with. This is essentially JMX metrics and metrics from the system and platform. A little bit of overlap of what JON is collecting at the high level. We also collect it with a trace so that you always have it as a bundle that you can refer and do your analysis. Another feature in the JON environment, we extend the JON alerting framework to give you another. Matt showed you a bunch of the existing actions, and we give you another action called the RTI trace, so that as a problem occurs, you can turn RTI tracing on automatically, capture deep diagnostics about the problem as it's happening, and it's stored on the server. When you use RTI, you use multiple interfaces. You use the JON web console, which we'll show you here, to look at your metrics and also to define your alerts. As I said earlier, you use the RTI console to actually look at do your deep analysis of the data, the trace and profile data. The console is an Eclipse-based RCP application, a thick client, and you run it on your laptop or workstation. Okay, here's the RTI architecture in a JON environment. As we said, you basically install RTI in the hosts where your JBoss, Tomcat, or Fuse servers are running, and RTI begins the process of collecting data. Most all our data is collected and stored locally on that host. You don't need a central server for that. We do, in a JON environment, start pushing. We essentially install a little plugin in the JON agent that allows you to start pumping the metrics out to the JON server where it's persisted in the JON database. And as I said, you can use the JON web console to connect and look at things. You also connect the RTI console the same way, so you use your same JON credentials to log in, as Matt was showing you, the users and roles, to log in, look at the data, and also control RTI through here, send out control and bring back the deeper traces. All right, so we're going to move on to a live demo here. I've got an e-commerce application running out in the Amazon cloud. I have a Tomcat front end just with struts, and it's making remote EJB calls to a JBoss backend. And of course, we have a JON server out there running. I happen to be using JMeter just to push a test load through my system here, but it works on a production system. You don't need any synthetic requests or anything like that. It all works with live data. So let's go. The first view I'm going to give you, it's nice following Matt because we have a nice introduction to the JON console here. Again, here's the resources. For this, as we go through this demonstration here, I'm going to focus on the Tomcat node because that's the edge of my system here. But if my responsibility were the EJBs and the remote JBoss backend, all of this applies there, and I can treat that as my system. You can see here we have what we call an RTI collector. It shows up as another resource in the JON tree here. I'm just making sure you can actually read that. I don't know if you can in the back of the room, but so from the Tomcat node, you can see these are the new RTI metrics that we're doing for the whole Tomcat application as a whole, Tomcat server as a whole, doing rate and response time essentially and errors if we detect them. But we also, as we discover transactions from the traffic into the system, we show individual transactions here, and for example, and we keep metrics about those as well. You can see in this dashboard, we do the alerting. We have an alert defined here, but you can define alerts on individual transactions based on their performance. And we'll circle around and get to that. So that's sort of the basic level of when you've hooked RTI up, it's discovered these all of these transactions entering the system, and it starts doing rate and response time metrics for it. Now when we want to move to the deeper level, we'll switch over to the RTI console. What we have is a welcome page here. We have a number of links for the common workflows that you do with RTI, and we'll go through a bunch of those. As I kind of showed in one of those diagrams, when you want to get at your, since the performance data is kept locally on the host where it's collected, what you do with the console is establish connections to them. What I've done is establish a connection here through, again, I'm logged on through the JON server, establishing a connection to the Tomcat platform. I also have a connection to the JBoss backend platform. We also support, if you're directly connected, you can connect through SSH straight to a machine. You don't have to have JON.
When you say straight SSH, does that mean there has to be, it doesn't have to be, I think I'm mixing issues. I know some systems use agents and some systems let you just go in there using SSH, but I guess I'm not confusing issues there.
So you can do, we support either model. So you can provide all your access through JON, through that JON mechanism, and essentially what I've done here is basically logged into JON using my JON credentials and said I'm interested in these particular hosts that I'm allowed to see. You can use, as Matt was saying, you can use the permissions and roles to restrict what I, as a developer, could, the hosts that I'm allowed to see and access, and do all that through JON if you want. But for example, if developers have sandbox versions of JBoss they're working with, they can just connect directly through SSH. They don't have to go through JON. We do have some customers that use JBoss Bear in the production environment and just connect directly. Oftentimes that's good for us for demo, for evals. They can just do that really quickly. And
what are the advantages from your perspective of using, building on top of JON or building it in conjunction with JON?
Well, technically speaking, we love JON because that's our transport mechanism, particularly the Windows platforms. We don't have to worry about any of the oddities of Windows. The feature it gives us, in particular in RTI, is the enhanced alerting. We use the JON alerting framework to do our automatic turning on of traces and things like that. In fact, a little behind the scenes, as we were developing RTI, we were about to the point where we needed to do something like alerting, and we became aware of JON and said, "Oh, wait a minute, that's the answer to all our prayers," and we've gone through the JON framework. All right, so we've established a couple connections. The last area here is the workspace. As you bring the data over and we correlate it together, it's stored locally. You can, of course, trade these data sets. For example, if I'm doing first-level performance analysis, I might look at the data and say, oh, the problem's in the EJBs in the back end, and I can ship off that data set to the guy who knows about EJBs or something. So collaboration with them. All right, so let's do some analysis here. One of the first things we do have a monitoring dashboard, which kind of duplicates what you can get in JON. I think JON probably does a little better job, but for people who are directly connecting, some people use that directly. I'm going to look at the first thing I'm going to do is do some metric analysis. And what I have access through the console to the whole JON resource tree here. For example, I can pick system load and user load from the Tomcat platform, the host here, the Linux host that's running Tomcat. I can then go to the RTI collector here and start getting my rate and transactions per minute is usually what I take, and average response time. I can kind of pick some metrics that I'm interested in. I could go further if I was interested in an individual transaction and dive down and access all the resources. I also can get all the other JON resources here if I want from the JON resource tree. But essentially, I can pick some data here, and now we'll go to the JON, the JON server and pull back the resource data, and I can start doing essentially visual correlation if I want with this kind of thing. The data for this chart, you can save the chart as a picture, or you can save the data as a CSV file if you want to export it into another, export and then import it into another tool. This gives me a way to look at the data. I can actually set this chart up to be a rolling chart that continually updates every minute or something like that if I want to watch things. So that's sort of the first level. Just looking at metrics, allowing you to compare and correlate from multiple resources. The next level is, we'll move on to the lightweight transaction profile. I'm sorry, I already have one here. I was just going to bring that, and I'll just go ahead and refresh that. So again, this is the transaction profiling, which is essentially summarizing method entry and exit times. What we do, I'll just say at the bottom are a couple of charts like the one we just looked at here. We bring up collector-specific and platform-specific, but we're not too interested in those. I'm going to maximize this table. We organize our profile based on on the transactions that we discover here, and this allows me to, I get an overall view of the time so that I can focus on transactions that are actually slow rather than guessing which ones are. A bad habit of developers is, I know what the answer is, but you spend a lot of time doing something. And what I can do is start to drill down into what this transaction is doing. Again, this is on the Tomcat side. I can follow this light red path here, and that's the slowest path through this transaction. So I could, again, help me focus my attention where things are really slow. And I finally get down to here as we move through the Tomcat, through the struts and JSP layer. And then I get to essentially an outgoing EJB call here to the JBoss backend. Profile works on just on a per JVM basis. At this point, if I'm doing analysis, sometimes this is enough to give you an idea of where to start, where to look for things. But in this case, I noticed that, hey, the EJB call itself is taking 10 seconds of the average, 13 seconds that this request takes. So I think my problem is over in the EJB. Well, from here, I need to switch to my deep dive tracing, which allows me to trace across JVMs here. Now, we give you some configuration options for the deep dive trace. Again, you could just single out individual transactions to trace. In this case, that's all I'm interested in. I don't want to be swamped by data from all the other transactions. So I can say just focus on this one transaction. I can pick the time. I could filter out, in this case, calls under 10 milliseconds. This is a 10-second request. I'm probably not interested in that much detail. I can filter it out. And I can say, well, trace this for the next 5 minutes, for example, so that I can collect some data. I don't know how often this one arrives, but so I can pick that configuration up, define it, and now I'm sending my commands back through the JON server around to the agent here in RTI that's turning the trace on in this Tomcat instance here. Now traces, I started in the Tomcat, but traces will continue. We use that tag and follow, so it will continue through the actual road EJB call in the JBoss backend of this application. Normally what I do, since I'm running a manual trace here, I'm just working on a problem, I might sit around and wait for some data to be collected. We're not gonna have to sit and wait. I have a data set already loaded, an example here. Let's switch over to that. So basically after 5 minutes I'd say, okay, bring me the data back from the Tomcat and JBoss node and correlate it together. And it would arrive here in my, what we call our deep dive editor. At the top here are the top level requests. Again, they all start on the Tomcat side. They're all the authenticate requests. That's what we're tracing in this example. I can look here. I have a summary of the data. Again, I have data from Tomcat. If I look at the kind of transaction events, you can see again it was that struts and JSP, and these are sort of outgoing EJB calls. Don't worry, it's even clearer than this. And then if I peek at the events from JBoss side, it's incoming EJB calls, Hibernate calls, and then the JDBC calls to implement it. So that just gives me an idea what data I have. This view on the lower right here is our summary of the elapsed time of these requests. You can kind of eyeball it and see that we're averaging, about 11 seconds here, but we do have some really slow transactions, and these are the ones that I want to look at and figure out why are these guys slow. I can actually pick one of these and look at it if I want. We'll work on that. Another view we do here of the data is this is the timeline view of as those transactions arrived, how they arrived, and what their duration is. And it kind of gives you an idea of your shape. You can see this particular load test doesn't have a lot of concurrency, not a lot of concurrent users in it, but it gives you a little view. All right, so let's dig in. What I can do here, I've already got it sorted by elapsed time, so I have my slowest request here at 21 seconds. And what I can do is say, okay, I want to dig into the details here, and I can focus on this particular transaction. And what it'll do is open it up. Let me maximize this view here so we can take a look. And this is what we call our correlated event tree. And you can see, again, our transactions starting out in Tomcat, moving through struts. This is the outgoing EJB call from Tomcat, and then this is the incoming EJB call on the JBoss node. And you can see very quickly it moves down to a Hibernate query, and in fact we show the Hibernate query source here so that you can figure that out. If I'm sharp and watching, I can see, okay, this Hibernate query is taking 10 seconds here, but if I peek at the JDBC queries that are made to implement it, I can see they take no time at all. So to me, this indicates, hey, I've got some problem perhaps with Hibernate configuration, but I'm allowed to zero in on where the problem is. If I'm really astute and really paying attention, I notice, okay, that's about 10 seconds of this request. The top level request takes about 21 seconds, so where am I spending the rest of the time? I can take instead of looking at this as a tree view, the way it happened in time, I can just sort it flat, and again, if I sort on the net time, I can see that there actually were 2 of these Hibernate requests to the country bean that took 10 seconds each. So not only were they slow, I'm doing 2 of them, and perhaps that's a logic error that I can work on. But that's the kind of thing that you can do with RTI. Again, use the profile to find transactions that are actually slow and kind of watch things at a top level, get a quick overview, and then when something I'm really interested in, turn the trace on, and then I can see the deep dive trace and drill right down to where I'm looking. Let's see. Along with the trace data, we're collecting lots of other data. One of the things we're collecting is heap information, heap and garbage collection information. This chart is summarizing both I have data both here from the Tomcat and the JBoss node, so it's a little bit busy here, but I think the slate gray is the Tomcat heap size, actual heap used, and the yellow is the JBoss heap used, whereas the magenta is the max heap, and I think blue is heap committed. But it doesn't matter. So I can see what's happening in the heap as I move through this trace here. The vertical bars here, the actual garbage collection cycles. If I look on this side, most of them are all under 0.05 of a second, so these are minor collection cycles. But I have one spike here in this red bar, which is the Tomcat garbage collection. So I have a major collection cycle on Tomcat. And I guess these days they say the rule of thumb is have 1 major collection a day. So maybe this means I need to do some tuning in my Tomcat heap. Something. But it gives you an idea of the performance while this trace was happening. What's going on? Please feel free to jump in with questions. Normally I pause, but I'm trying to get us out of here in a recent time, so moving a little fast. All the data that are in these charts are also available sort of in table form, all the heap information here, so you can get some totals from those. At the same time, we're also collecting other JMX metrics, usually at a faster rate than they collect from JON, because again, we collect the data locally, so it doesn't have to go across the network, so we can store more data and not worry about network bandwidth. So we're recording those. There's even more in-depth garbage collection information, depending on which garbage collector you're using, information about the various phases and the memory pools. Speaking of pools, we're also recording information about EJB pools. So for example, we were looking at the country bean, and we have a record of the data of the country bean. I can actually take these metrics and plot them over. We have another chart here that has some default metrics, but I can take all of these and plot them on there, so I can see what my pool usage is during a load test, and see if my pool is too small or too large, and I can reallocate that type of thing. So just the same kind of thing. We have also the data connections, database connections here, so I can keep track of how's my pool usage there.
You know, you can compare 2 transactions to one another to say you want to find the atypical ones, or something that goes outside the norm?
That's something on our roadmap. We don't have that yet, but we would like to.
Okay.
Yes, that's something we would like to do. Okay, so that's all that. We also have some other summaries here. These are sort of tabular summaries. Again, this is what we call our database summary, and it basically is summarizing Hibernate or JDBC events based on the actual query source here. So it gets you a summary. You can see if they're all performing. We have a method summary here where we summarize essentially CPU or elapsed time on methods, so you can look for hotspots for methods. If you're using the SNOA platform, we have a summary for that as well, but we don't have any in this example. Oh, I'll also point out for these events, as we were moving through walking through this transaction and diving into it, we display what we think is the most identifying data up here, but we are actually collecting lots of information, more method parameters and things that you can walk through and find all these. And of course, you could, if you find one of these particularly interesting, sometimes people are interested in thread ID. You can add the column at the top if you want.
How does it store the file system?
Yeah, we have a memory mapped, a special high performance memory mapped system that we use to essentially a ring buffer here. So you define a fixed amount of space. We won't go over that. That allows us to be very safe in production environments.
If you want to sort of do this close to time.
Yeah, depending on how big you set that. The typical targets we've seen are people doing 5-minute traces. We have had customers that said, hey, we want to trace our entire 2-hour load test. And we say, well, you'll need a lot of disk, and they say, yeah, and they define that. Out of the, we try to pick a good.
How much disk?
Unfortunately, it depends on how much traffic you have during that time. Yeah, so it's sort of, we basically store about 1,500 bytes of information per event. And so there might be, I think on this application, there might be 100 events per transaction, essentially method calls that we're tracing per transaction. So, and then multiply that by how many you get per minute, and you get, you can work it out by pencil and paper if you want. Typically, customers will run an evaluation and they'll find out, oh, okay, yeah, this is.
The memory maps that it's actually Java.
Yeah, no, it's actually native code in the shared library.
One of the things that when I look at RTI, I think a big struggle is that, yeah, I can run a collection manually when I want to, let's say, on a specific test. But I can also say, well, this metric was also the value, start this automatically, so I come back and I can see there's a problem, and I actually have a trace from that time that I can go down.
Right, and that's a great segue because that's what we're going to show you next.
Okay, say associated with that, you could be monitoring something like a message queue, and as the message queue grows, you reach some point something's causing the queue to grow instead of decrease. Start a measurement.
You can start your trace, yeah, and that's what we're going to do right now. Okay, so we looked at that authenticate request. That's our story that we're working with. And supposing we had a hard SLA of 5 seconds, on average, we're supposed to complete that in 5 seconds. Another cool feature, as Matt pointed out, is the baseline. It can figure out the baseline values, and you can use that to trigger these alerts. Hey, if we start to go outside our normal range, you can start to trigger things to, that's a very useful one. But we're going to pick on authenticate. We're going to say we have a hard SLA for 5 seconds. So we go to alerts, and we'll go ahead and define one here. I'm not actually going to keep it because I have some examples, but we fill in the basic information, the demo, and the first half is the condition that it'll fire. In this case, Matt did availability change to get the when the system went up or down. In this case, we're going to watch the metric value of the value of a metric here. We're picking the absolute value because we have an absolute SLA we're working with. Again, you could one of the options here is to pick the baseline threshold, and that's really you can pick 90% of the threshold and be enough. But we're going to do an absolute value. We're going to use the RTI average response time metric, and we want to know if it goes greater than 5 seconds. So we pick greater than, we specify 5 seconds in milliseconds, and boom, we've got our condition. As Matt said, you can add multiple conditions and have any and or logic for it all. The second half of the alert is the notification, what to do. And you can do one or more things here.
You set that to equal or greater than?
I thought I said greater than. It doesn't matter. I'm going to throw this one away.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I should have said greater than. Good catch. So small on my screen. I can't. No. So as Matt was saying, you can send the messages and emails. And what we do with RTI, when you install RTI, we add this RTI alert capability. So now I can choose when this alert fires. I can say, hey, start one of these automatic traces. And typically that's what we'll do is start a time trace here. And following our model, we'll say, hey, let's just collect 5 minutes worth of data from this system here. And that's how I can set it up. There are other parameters. We don't need that in this particular case. And so that allows us to do it. We actually could start multiple traces in multiple places if we want, and all that wonderful stuff. You can use and as Matt was saying, you can use recovery and dampening to keep from being overwhelmed. We'll show you, talking about overwhelming, we'll show you that in just a second. I'm not going to save this particular one. If you look here, as we've been running, I had a 5 second SLA alert that's been firing. It's actually been firing every minute as the metric was collected once a minute. It's been firing. I didn't use any dampening on it. This is why you'd want to use dampening, because otherwise you're just going to be tracing all the time. I'll also show you, as Matt pointed to, on a dashboard view, your recent alerts would show up there too. But the nice thing is about RTI, you can have it do this. It'll show the alert here, but also send an email to you, the performance engineer, so that you know, hey, I've got something waiting. Like if you're in DevOps, I've got something waiting. When we did the manual trace, we brought the data directly over to the console. In this case, because we're doing alert traces, the trace data is captured and saved on the JON server until we can download it. So we don't have to worry about the wraparound buffer. Don't have to worry about it going away. And if you're really worried about space, we have a skulker job on the JON server that goes around and erases these traces after 7 days, and you can change that. But the idea was this would allow you to save a trace over a long weekend and have it still be there.
So the RTI console can pull from the JON database?
We don't put it in the JON database. We put it in the support downloads or no.
Directly or something?
Yeah, in a JON directory. So. Okay, so now we've been notified. Either somebody told us we had an alert, or we got an email saying we had an RTI alert. So we put on our performance engineer hat, and we come back to the console. I connect to the JON server essentially and say, well, let me look at if I had a specific time, I could pick that out, or I can say, I'm just going to say, let me look at the RTI alerts over the last 30 minutes here. I've got a big list here, and I can kind of scroll through. So let's take a look at this one. This is, again, it was the authenticate resource, the authenticate transaction is where alert was. The alert was defined for if the average response time goes over 5 seconds. The actual average reached 12 seconds in this case. And then here's the action we took. We did a time trace for 5 minutes. When I defined the alert, I said, hey, I want the data from both the Tomcat node and the JBoss node. So I actually have 2 snapshots here that were taken from 2 separate nodes when the alert fired. And I've got that data. I'll just point out, this is the most recent alert, and you can kind of see the snapshot. There's no snapshot here. Sorry, here on this line. There's no data yet because the 5 minutes isn't up. As soon as that 5 minute time, this trace just started. But normally, what I hope I wouldn't have this many. Yeah.
When you're doing these traces across systems, you have to manually tell it what systems you want to trace.
You basically tell it the start points that you want. So in this case, I just had to say turn the trace on in Tomcat. However, I do have to say get me the data from all the possible nodes where it might go.
You need to tell it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
That's another thing on the roadmap, perhaps, to do that. All right. So I've picked one of these, and so now I'll download the. Well, that happened pretty quick. I'm used to it taking a lot longer because I'm usually on the West Coast, and these servers are running on the East Coast. But so it's downloaded. It should be. There we go. Give us a little idea. So it's taking the data again from the Tomcat and the JBoss nodes, and it's stitching that together to form that tree. And it should load it up in the. Again, this is a deep dive trace, but this is one that was collected automatically by the JON server for us. It'll have the same data if we sort it here, and if we were to dig into this particular one, it should look the same because we haven't fixed the bug, but we just have to sort it differently here. But I think we'll get to the same bug. Oh, this is a different kind of. This is a different bug, a different version of that same bug that we put in here. But again, all the same data is there. The transaction response times, the GC information, all the JMX metrics are available. Again, captured in one complete data set so that we can look and see what was happening from the automatic alert. That's usually all I have to demo. Any questions about that, about alerting and all that kind of?
So I have a sort of a broad question. If someone already has new element in place, what would you say to them? Convince them to bring this in place too?
I think we have. Yeah, that's a good question. Well, with New Relic, all your data is offsite, so often people that are worried about data security, we don't require that you have a centralized server. All the data is just kept on the host, and you control all the access to that data. So that's one differentiator. We have a better. We pride ourselves on having the best integration with the JBoss middleware and providing the best information about that and the deepest information. Other than that, it's sort of you know, 6 of this, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, you know, the features.
Implementing the J code, do you have issues with like latest versions of Java or JBoss or something like that? You know, things go to that.
Yeah, there is some lag, but we're always, for example, we're currently integrated with Wildfly 8.1, so we work with the upstream to make sure that by the time it reaches production, we're set. That's it's not easy. It's like drinking from a fire hose. Yeah, I don't think we've done 6.3.1 yet, but we've done 6.3, and you know, but we specifically target the upstream projects so that we discover the problems there, and then we verify again when the GA releases are made. It's never been that long. I mean, our release schedule is really about every 4 months. It usually takes us a week to digest a new version and see what's different. Now, if there's new things, for example, we haven't fully integrated WebSockets because that's what, EE7 or well, you know, that's the last piece we have to do there. But we're figuring that out in Wildfly. So by the time it reaches EAP, it should be okay. We've done very well with that. I'm trying to think. Right, yeah. But our goal is to stay ahead. We don't ever want to have a customer. But we do have people. You know, for example, we didn't have anything for SAML stuff, and within a day we can get the basic capability in there to expand RTI. Let me just show you what that looks like. I'll go to the JBoss node here. We can edit the configuration. Again, out of the box, we're hoping to hit 99% of what you need. Certainly from the standard frameworks and libraries and things, and then you can extend them. So this is sort of our list of what we've done. Users can actually extend this themselves for their own application code, or if there's some pieces of JBoss we're not hitting yet, we can do that. We did, I think, for example, we did Eclipse Link the other day. Customer needed it, we did it, and then we roll it into the product for that.
So how about that?
We started testing on SOA 4. Yeah, so we go way back. Well, to be honest,
it's not so much that
yeah. So that's as far back as we've gone. We do Tomcat 6. We just had a customer asking about Tomcat 5.5. Tomcat doesn't change that much, so we're probably JBoss. Every new version, they come out with a whole new set of JMX MBean names and metrics, and that's a real pain in the ass. Yeah, that's a real pain. That's the hardest part of the whole darn thing, keeping up or swapping in a new. You know, you can see the kind of things. Oh, I'll point out here. We have the basic Hibernate that we do, which you can turn on, record, and that typically we do that for. I just learned a new term today: personally identifying information. That way, we're not collecting that in them. However, if you need to, you can add additional level here to capture the actual parameters on the SQL. We don't target it. We're simply not recording the parameters with the any parameters with the SQL with the SQL query or the HQL query. And in most of the others, yeah, I think we're all right. Yeah. So you can add that. Also, what we've done is optimized, for example, for JDBC. What we think the most interesting ones are in our base configuration. However, you can add and trace everything in the JDBC spec if you want. Typically, that's not what you're going to want to do, but you might want some odd method that you're interested in, so you'll copy over this one and single out that one to be able to trace, but you can extend that way. We also, as we said, we record the JMX stuff, so we have JMX pattern files to pick it out. So if you have custom MBeans in your application, you can add your MBeans here, and RTI will collect that along with the trace data and be able to display it for you. This is one of those things that, as a new version of JBoss comes out, we have to tune this to include the ever-increasing set of those. I was just doing some Wildfly stuff on that. There are some other features in RTI which we don't usually demo, but I'll just mention. We also can do thread dump snapshot collection so that you can do that. I think, let's see if I have one that I could just load up real quick. And this is very similar to some to the free tools like Samurai or same kind of features. Here's where we collect this, but it's all in one tool. We found that customers, when they install this in production, it's very hard for them to get tools in. So getting one tool that can do it all. Our original goal was let's not duplicate any free open source tools with this, but we found that customers really said, hey, it's much easier for us to get one RTI tool in there and be able to do multiple things from it. We also have a statistical profiler. It's a great way if you have tons of, for example, we just did some work with a customer that had a Tomcat front end and custom Java applications in the back providing JDO. So we didn't really have a lot of frameworks supporting that, but they could use our StatProf, which is statistical profiling like HProf, and capture all the information about it. It's another way to find code if you want. Yeah, so we have some other tools that are built in there. One other one that a customer recently asked about was, hey, could you do a heap dump for us? Again, in production, it's hard to get any of the other tools in to do that. They just, can you do the heap dump, capture the file? We don't care, we're not going to duplicate a tool like Eclipse MAT or any of those, but they were interested in just capturing that, so we might.
So that was my next include function.
No, not yeah. Mostly, again, because there are tons of open source tools to do that. But the idea of capturing the heap dump and being able to get it out of the production environment really was appealing for DevOps groups. So that's some of the other tricks that RTI can do. Yeah, we do. When you I think I actually have that on slide. I hate to do this because it's so salesy, but let's do this. So basically, we can collect data for the JBoss middleware on Windows and Linux. This is where we're installed. All the current versions. These are where we start counting the version numbers of all the current JBoss middleware. We actually have plugins you can plug into JMeter and SoapUI to start tracing from there. Some people like to do that. Not a whole lot, really. Most of them use it on the server side. We do have a plugin that browser plugin you can plug in to start tracing from Internet Explorer or Firefox if you want to do that, see the network stuff. The console, which I'm using, you can run on Windows, Linux, and Mac, and we're compatible with the current versions of JON, and just the same way that we work with Wildfly upstream, we're always working with the latest RHQ release to make sure we're compatible. So, for example, when version 3.3 comes out in the next few days, we've already tested it on 12, so it'll just take us a day to be ready to go. Oh yeah, so we do have an OpenShift cartridge. You can plug in RTI, just drop it in. It finds the JBoss that's installed and instruments there and scales, and you can connect.
So they usually have to add that cartridge to their application.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, just add it to your gear or to your cartridge. Sorry, your application, and it works the same way. And you connect. You actually connect through the base gear, and we'll find the other gears and make them available.
Similar to JON.
I don't think you'll see JON in membership.
There's been some attacks. The computer sizes needs to be quite a lot bigger. Agents. So one way we have looked at it, we have a central agent, and it's in the Linux rules that allows you to go
Yeah, I've seen the demo running as root on the base OpenShift machine, being able to peek in and find them. But
yeah, the issue is every time you open up and create a new thing, that you go to OpenShift, it's a new item. ID change, things can move around. Not very good to pick on that one out. So there is a lot of work in changing the way JON operates in version 4 when that comes out. So it will be easy to fit into that.
So Yeah, direct connect through SSH basically. Yeah. And you can take a look at how that works on our website. You can walk through the example. I think there may even be a video of it demoed there. We offer a 31-day evaluation. Download it, install it in your system, try it out, see what data we collect on your system. Typically, that I'll tell you, we have a Jumpstart, which is a 1-hour remote WebEx where we'll help you get it set up and configured for your system. And typically, those I have trouble when developers are on those because they see something really interesting right away and they want to dive in and solve the problem. And I'm like, wait, let's look at the rest of the data here. But it happens more often than not. I'm quite pleased to see that happen. We do offer a quick start, which is on-site training, where we come out for a couple days. And the way those engagements work out is we kind of have a scripted part. We do that first morning where we kind of run through a very extended demo to show you all the pieces. And then after that, we turn over and we have you run on your system with your data and answer your questions. Cool. That's typically how those run out. And so you can contact us for that. Yeah, where's our... Oh yeah, so that's the picture of it in OpenShift. That basically will be in the gears, and you install it in the base gear, and if it scales up, you get a copy of RTI if they're collecting data as you scale up.
George, do you guys do the same resellers?
We do. So we have a network of, public
So
sector.
it's the same contract vehicles and stuff.
True. So our public sector distributor is Carasoft. Our commercial is Finex, and then we work with, a variety of resellers. Very one of our preferred resellers. A little host of others.
We also
Sell
anything.
That's
A couple of general JON questions. That's probably you, and that is being able to collect custom metrics type thing. How would you do that? So, for example, if you had an application that was doing something or other and popping out a number every now and then, and you wanted JON to be able to consume that and track it and display it.
Expose the applicant.
Yeah.
Now there is a plugin architecture behind it when you tell it what it means to actually retrieve, and all you do is go in and change that. So if you have your own custom application, it will create your own plugin that lists what those beans are and what its metrics are, and you collect and you can start using them.
You could consume from a file as well, though, obviously, right? Meaning if there was something that was generating a file output, like CSV equivalent or something on that line, then RC JON can suck that in.
You can't consume from a file.
Yeah, it depends on what you were looking for. Yes. So you can build metrics in.
I mean, such as a log file. Say it was a custom log file that an application
Right.
generated.
If you want to look for specific patterns, as you say, when this comes in my file, or like you get a stack number, you get something else, it can look at that, and then they will be converted into what's called events.
Yeah.
And then you can create alerts on top of those and say, when this event happens, I want X, Y, and Z to happen. It also allows you to have a central point of viewing all your log files throughout the whole system. But be prepared to have a large database when you start doing that. Yeah. You want to be a little more careful of just don't put it on full debug on all these 100 servers.
But you have to go through you're not just looking through text, right? I mean, you're looking for specific events, like logging events, things like that.
And then, so you do that, right? So when you set up your filtering, you set up basically a regex expression that says, I want this particular pattern to be converted to this event. And then you can set up multiple filters. And it doesn't just have to be system-wide. It can be application-specific logs, your sys logs, and other things like that. And when those events are found, you also have a collection interval on that. It will go in and look at events raised, and then.
But the best way to do it for an application would be to expose stuff as an MV, or to expose metrics through an MV. That way, like you've got.
We're going to tell JON to use it, and that's what plugins do.
Yeah.
So the plugins, they basically just list, okay, you're going to use the standard JMX stuff, and here's all the beans that you need to collect. So literally all it says, it doesn't say anything.
There's still some upstream plugins for non-JBoss data stuff. So
Upstream what plugin?
generic, like sometimes you can pull up Postgres, MySQL, or
Oh, most of them, I mean, from tree X or tree 0 to tree 1 that really didn't change the plugin architecture. The main issue really is that no one seems to maintain them, so when Oracle or whoever changes their way of accessing that doesn't keep up. But yeah, I've certainly seen Oracle done. I've seen all kinds of strange stuff that really have nothing to do with us. I mean, you can go in on the insert and manually say, here's a JVM. Just start monitoring that random JVM from somewhere. Or here's a specific process that I need to monitor and tell it to collect certain basic metrics. There are specific, fairly easy ways of setting up custom monitoring.
One thing, we usually talk CLI in P6, or we talk JBoss, but CLI.
There's still endings in there. Still endings. I don't. Yeah, it's not using. Yeah, it's not using the same code, so I don't use.
I don't use CLI because not everything has an ending.
Right. I mean, so a lot of those things that there's plug in, they, when you configure them, you have to add
But each plugin tells you.
switches to turn on.
Right, but each plugin has their own mechanisms. You use different things for Apache than you do for JBoss and things like that. And the plugin specifies what mechanism you want to use out. In Apache, for instance, you need to install mod as an MP to get enough information on the server other than your up and running. You not start looking at the virtual host and looking at what was loaded and some more detailed stuff. And of course, we have the spice metrics set up to web services as well. It will log every time the service is called, how long it took to do the call. And you can use that as a basis for an alert to say if this group service is not responding within my SLA time, I want to release an alert or something. All of the generates traffic. So once you get over a certain size, there's a lot of additional options there. So, and so
the question came up about cost. Or we sell RTI the same, is licensed the same way as JBoss, with subscription model in core 16 or 64 core groups. You essentially license data collection. And then all the other pieces like the console, and if you want to do the browser plugin or the SOAP UI stuff, all the rest of it is free. Just the data collection on servers is what you license, and that starts at I think it's $24.75. It's for the 16 core group. So that's just, and we follow the JBoss licensing model, so it's easy because they've already figured all that out for Red Hat, and we just say. That's right, yes.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Yeah, we find we're a quarter of the cost.
Do you guys have any like rules on if they have a very large deployment?
Yeah.
You want them to put that on the whole
No, you can pick as much as you want. And similar to if you license in production or QA test, you can use it for free in development.
pretty much copied us straight out there.
It's just easier.
So with the AP, they have a large production, we'll let them get that free testing.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, they have to have coverage, and they can't have like 16 cores and have like a 8,000 core production environment.
Yeah.
Sure, good, good fit. Okay, Associated Press?
Hmm?
Say AP?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we would sort of push back on customers coverage for
Yeah.
That's normally what
Yeah, we had some recent customer that was using, I guess they were using SOAP in production, SOAP and EAP in production, but they were starting to do some work with Fuse just in development, so they were able to get use that for free. Well, all the tools in the development area are free. It's hard to compete.
But if they have an active SOAP subscription, they're entitled to use.
That could be, yeah.
Not open source software, so
That's right, yeah.
well, entitled
Not
to
yet.
support it. So
Not yet.
once the whole period is over, SOAP is no more.
I have no more tricks.
So when's your next one?
The next one
Tuesday.
is Tuesday the 18th.
This coming Tuesday.
So we do them. We try to do them once a month, and so it'll be Tuesday the 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight, and that's posted on our website. And then one in December. And then
December 18th, right?
December 18th. They're typically on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. It's about an hour. No registration. Invite customers.
So what do you cover?
Same thing we
Same
covered
thing.
here.
JON and RTI.
Do you guys have a, I call it American Story as well, where you've been out with RTI for a system and they basically say, this cost, this installation allows us to save cost, to fix issues, save us X amount of dollars.
Sure.
I mean, in a sense where this tool was, I guess, the key for them to come to a successful resolution to issues.
Yes, and I would say we have sort of like identifying problems, explaining the customer issue, and then how they utilized RTI to solve that problem. We have customer use cases.
Yeah, or a case study. We have the use cases. We don't have sort of a really formal case study that says, yeah, they saved this much, but
We have about
yeah.
6 village-ish of those.
I don't care about. But I'm thinking about something about we spent 9 months trying to identify the problem, install this in 10 minutes. We knew what was going on. Stuff like that, because when you have complex systems, figuring out where things are falling apart is tough.
We have anecdotal. Yeah, which is customers are a bit shy to go on record.
Do you have that ROI slide?
I don't. Not easily.
I can forward it to you.
I mean, a lot of times, just convincing them they need to start using monitoring, let them go. Well, we already have a monitoring tool. It barely tells them they have a JVM running.
Right.
So you go to this whole notion of talking about the deep dive. They initially get excited, but this is something new to learn. And then they start talking about all the headaches they have. And you say, how can I present this tool to them as this? Yes, there's an upfront investment in knowledge, but look at what it saves you.
So I always like that too, because you know customers can show their architecture diagram and all the parts of what this office is. This little section over here, nothing's talking.
Yeah.
Because they don't
know it.
It's not in the application.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, stuff like that, it is very hard to get to that realization sometimes. You just basically say, well, we took, this one use case, maybe without using it, they did this, and here's the tool set that allowed them to actually not only solve the problem, but succeed with it.
I have some data I can send you for that. Yeah.
Well, and that out of the playbook has that that level of detail.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come down and say dollars, but it says.
No.
And so that may not be as important as saying, here's, we save time.
Right, exactly.
People can convert that into dollars.
Exactly. We did one recently, well, actually about a year ago, that was sort of after the fact. They had rolled out, it was an e-commerce application, they had rolled out a new version at the end of in their busy season at the end of October, and suddenly it wasn't working right. And they thought they had a database problem, and they went and bought tons of really expensive database hardware. Did not solve the problem. They worked 3 months on it, and they found the problem was some software configuration. And after being burned by that, and when they licked their wounds and had enough money in their pocket to go looking, they went looking for tools, and we dropped RTI in there and said, okay, let's turn on the trace and see what's happening in here. And within 5 minutes, you could be right to the point where, holy cow, look at this SQL query that what it happened to be a geographical, find the closest store, and they were missing a default parameter, and it was searching the entire world and bringing back.
Well, that right there, 5 minutes, 3 months to 5 minutes is huge.
Right.
That is the huge, because during that 3 months, nothing else is getting done in that shop.
Yep.
That's what they were doing.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing, and actually they were using a third-party business objects library. So part of that 5 minutes was to say, okay, what does that look like? Let's quickly extend RTI to cover over that, just in case. We actually could tell from the top level that because the default one would get the request arriving in the system, and it would cover the SQL, which was enough to tell, holy cow, the SQL query is taking forever, and then we were able to add in coverage for their third-party business objects library to point out where they could find the interface, capture the parameters for that interface, and say, oh, why is number of miles 0, which meant infinity as opposed to
You got to give credit to
15.
them. Some people do.
They learned, so it's sort of after the fact there. The other ones are
Sad
just
statement, but screw it.
the other ones that, like I said, where people where we're just doing that jumpstart walkthrough and they'll immediately, oh wait, why is it doing that? And want to dig down into a problem. So we see that all the time, but I don't have any quantitative information
We also
on
have a lot of customers who say, yeah, we need to have that running in production, but that just happened with who you're training with. They've got something else they've got to push out, so this is just yet another tool that they put into production.
Yeah, in that one we were doing the quick start on site, and we went on site. They had put it on. I think they had previously, prior to that, they had installed it on, I think, just a dev machine or sort of a test, a sandbox where they could play. We did that remotely. Went on site with the quick start training, and they went through the morning stuff, and by then they were convinced, holy cow, we need this. Overnight, they installed it on all the production machines so that the next day they could work on production data. One of their problems was they had connection pool that was, everything in the pool was going stale, and they had no idea, and they were mad at JBoss. Why doesn't JBoss just do this for us automatically? We actually added an EDF, extended RTI, an EDF trace to trace the managed connection pool to watch the background thread to see if it was, there's two of them. There's one that claims, removes stale ones, and there's another one that does the check to see if they're live, so that we could trace and see
to figure the checker and the eviction strategy.
Right, so we could add that to the trace here so they can see how, and that shows up now as a transaction. I think, it's not in this version because it's in 3.4.6, the next version. But and so now that we've added that EDF to the base configuration, so now other people can do that as well. So, but that's the kind of stuff.
I was going to say that I was working on a solar project for North Carolina, and we had OpenView as our system management tool. Could not get anything out. It was totally useless. They had sold the customer this really fancy concept, and we couldn't get any basic. It was a waste of money.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. Yeah, which works from the APIs. We work. Well, I mean, we collect JMX metrics from the what we consider the standard API, but it's the trace that gives you the visibility.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
No, not really. Again, that's an area that there are open source tools. The trouble is there's also a lot of overhead with tracing all the memory allocations and everything like that. I mean, sort of.
I actually have a couple customers across the street. One of them had something they were struggling with for a couple of months, and went in there, I'm like, show me your code. They're blaming everything but that.
Right.
And they were allocating one thing, allocating something else.
Right.
Yeah, so basically that's just getting a heat dump and pulling out that.
Yeah, and looking at that. Again, so that's such a well-covered area. A lot of customers do ask for that, and someday we might convince. Again, that one, having one tool in a locked-down production environment where you could get all that information would really help. So yeah, maybe there are a lot of other cool ideas. We asked about comparing two transactions. That's something what we would call the analytics part. We really want to do a lot of work there. The other thing on our roadmap is doing better integration with Fuse and Fabric to handle deployed containers and things like that. We have basic integration with that, and also Docker is on our horizon. I just added the support for it for the cartridge on OpenShift. Okay. And you can, since it's just JBoss underneath, you could really run this. I have not, to be honest, I have not run any traces and see what we pick up, but I just did it as an experiment, as a prototype. A couple, you're maybe the second person that's ever asked. I mean, they asked. Oh, okay. They're actually using that. Yeah, that's something we've done a lot, and so good. We'll add that to the list. That's why we come out here to find out what people want. But so that adds yet another thing that we have to keep up with.
It's got that sort of a virtual.
Right.
Those queries, when it does it, it's pushing down the sources.
Right. Yeah, it would be cool.
Layers.
Cool to look at all that stuff. Yeah. You know, and we handle JBoss AMQ. So you can actually trace in that, although a lot of people don't really want to. But if you use RTI, I thought it runs pretty well. But you're more interested if you start a transaction trace and it includes putting a JMS message on the queue, we will tag that message so that the trace will continue over again.
The problem we've had with that is there are no good tools out there to manage that. Look at performance.
Oh, okay. Well, you can turn.
Piece of this would be good.
Yeah, you can integrate, look at the trace, see what's going on through there. I do that. What's the other piece? Camel. Of course, Camel's in there because it's in the Fuse part. We're tracing through that as well.
Well, that's always been the problem with messaging, is because it represents a transaction boundary right there, and it's hard to trace beyond that, and pretty soon you're splicing together.
Right. Well, RTI will trace across that. You put the message in the queue, and it will trace, which is nice, from both sides, and it will do that automatically without having to actually trace AMQ. You get that sort of for free.
You mentioned SAM earlier, so I have customers, I guess IBM brought up data power. So they're doing the same token through the data power appliance through EAP.
Oh, okay.
Tools. You guys trace that?
If it's a separate, well, so I'll say this: if it's a Java, if it runs in a JVM, we could extend RTI to trace it, but not out of the box. We use like picket link,
so data power is
picket fence, and
it's a hardware appliance, but then it enters. So we just trace it through the hop. Just call it a hop. You would just
maybe I have to see what it is, but you have trouble.
It's a case of black box.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it. Right.
That's not data.
I thought they would have kicked us out like an hour ago.
We're going to turn the heat up here.
It's starting to get hot in here.
Well, this is great because Matt and I usually do this from opposite coasts, doing the WebEx, and we do the presentation, so it's fun.
Just do it at 8 o'clock in the morning next time.
No, he'll get me.
That'll be 5 a.m. for me.
That's what I mean, yeah.
I can do it because I get to sit for the first part while Matt's warm up, while Matt's getting everybody interested.